Did you make up some good stuff, Kitty?
I did. Hi, I'm Kitty McDaniel, president of La Playa Trail Association.
Polite applause.
Okay, after being an avid Beatle fan in her youth, Karen then turned that passion and enthusiasm toward researching and writing about historical events in San Diego. She is currently a freelance writer, historian, and educator who has written extensively on the maritime history of San Diego, particularly of the lower Point Loma Lighthouse and the 1905 explosion aboard the Navy gunboat, the USS Bennington on San Diego Bay. Karen received the Martha Washington Medal by Sons of the American Revolution for her work commemorating that naval disaster.
Right on, Karen.
Yay.
She and her twin, Kim, are longtime volunteers at Cabrillo National Monument, where they tend the lens and lantern of the old Point Loma Lighthouse. They also wrote the book, Lighthouses of San Diego, together. As a member of our La Playa Trail Association, Karen contributed to the book we wrote about Point Loma. She is also a certified lay minister in the United Methodist Church and also writes children's curriculum for its publishing house. So, how Karen ever found time to put together tonight's excellent presentation of the perilous career of U.S. naval ships, airships, is a mystery to me. Take it away, Karen.
Okay, thank you, Kitty.
Of course.
It's so nice to have all of you here, just from lots of walks of my life. Now, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get the picture on. This is where I do screen share, right, Eric?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, forgive me while I play around and try to find that.
There you go.
Here we go. Okay. Thank you.
Good job.
Okay. Well, greetings, everyone. Now, we've still got a lot of pictures on the right, but you can see my slideshow, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to turn everybody off except Karen. So go ahead, Karen. That's okay.
Okay. Well, let's do. How grateful I am to have all of you here. Thank you. And I hope that you learned something kind of neat about airships. I'm going to explain how I ended up doing this as soon as whoops, we're not sliding. Can't get to the next picture.
Use your arrow key.
Yeah, I'm using it and it's not going anywhere.
Click on the screen and then use arrow key. You make sure you're in PowerPoint.
Oh, there we go. I don't know where, but that's the screen I want to see. So whatever I did. Okay. Well, here's the silver blimp. When I was about 6 years old or 5, my father was a new engineer and he was training in New York, and my sisters and I would go out to Jones Beach. And I was afraid of most things as a little kid, including this airship that went over. It's a blimp. This is as close of a picture I can find. So when I was a kid, this thing flew over my head till I thought I could reach up and touch it. And it scared me so badly. And it just did something. You know how an experience when all your senses get involved? That's what happened. I was able to ride on the Goodyear blimp, the more modern one, a few years ago. And then I also had another experience with the airship. After high school in '69, I was standing in a kitchen in an apartment, and between the kitchen window and the parking garage, I saw this massive shadow come along. And I was in Canton, Ohio, very near the Akron plant. And this airship, the blimp, went sailing through, and it scared me again. And ever since those experiences, something got me. And I just started studying these things. But we're not going to look at these regular sized blimps. We're going to study tonight the airships. These names are interchangeable: dirigible, Zeppelin, airship. You can see at the top in this picture what an airship, the size variation compared to all the other blimps. And we're not really going to cover much blimp ground tonight, but look at this fellow's name. Look at von Zeppelin's name there. Ferdinand Adolf Heinrich August Graf von Zeppelin. That's quite a name. But he didn't start building these airships for Germany until after he retired, which I thought was interesting. All right, let's see if we can go. There we go. All righty. This is the LZ-1. This is a 420 length. You can read there. It was Zeppelin's first airship, and it just simply could not fly very well. Only 3 flights, as you can see, and then he went bankrupt. But that's a floating dock there. But look at the size of that thing. And I think of the amazing thinking that goes on in somebody's head to be able to build something like this, to create it. Now we're going to go to San Diego here for a minute. This is the construction of the Coronado blimp hangar. We have North Island in San Diego and Coronado. And the blimp hangar, this is gone now. It's not there anymore. Here's another picture of it coming up. There it is with one of the bigger size blimp. It's either a B or a C class, and depending on which one it was, how big it was. But you can see how the men on the ground are tethering. The ground crew is holding the tethered line. And there's a fellow on the top of the building there, making sure it's not hitting the top of the hangar frame. Anyway, so I just think this is neat. But Coronado, Naval Air Station North Island wanted to become the West terminal, the West Coast terminal for airships, but it never happened. But this was built before, this hangar was built long before, well, not long, but a few years before the giant airships came along. So the airship that we're going to talk about tonight would never have fit in this hangar at Coronado. Now, interestingly, I'm just throwing a couple facts in before we get to the Navy airships. This is a picture of the Empire State Building, and believe it or not, they actually put a blimp mast on the top of the Empire State Building. Now, I've talked to a number of people at the Empire State Building, the historian there, and he said a lot of that was rumor, but we don't think it was a rumor. We believe that it really did happen. However, no airship ever moored there, you can imagine. But one reason they put it there, ironically, was so that they could add the height to the building, making it the tallest building at the time, which I thought was kind of cheating, but that's what they did. So no airship ever moored there. But I think it's fascinating that they would even conceive of the idea.
You could parachute out of it. That's a long step.
So this is the Navy's DN1, dirigible non-rigid. So non-rigid means that the balloon of the airship is filled with the gas, the lifting gas. In this case, it was hydrogen. Later, they would use helium because it was less flammable. But this is the airship that the Navy was practicing on. That's a floating hangar there. And and this poor thing sank on its first trial, and they pulled it up, inflated it again, and flew it a time or two, but it was just too heavy to float. But that was the experiment. Like anything that happens good, you've got to experiment and play around, just like doing this technology tonight. So here is a poster promoting the Naval Airship Program. And Admiral Moffett was really a big key proponent in this. We're going to hear more about William Moffett here in a little while. But poor Moffett had quite an experience. Anyway, he was trying to get the government to put money into this airship program, and the government was just a little iffy after 4 of them went down, as you can understand, and we'll see about that. This is a wonderful quote from a book. It's like my airship Bible. It's called Upship. But read that quote. I don't need to read it to you. Can you all see it okay?
Yes.
So, had the operation been known, would Americans ever have undertaken this project of airships? And it's like I said in the flyer, that I think airships were a bad idea. But again, they could fly longer. They had a longer range than any airplane at the time, and they were reconnaissance vessels. So let's start and look at this one. Here we go with the USS Shenandoah, ZR1. ZR means Zeppelin rigid. Now these rigid airships, instead of their envelope being filled with the gas, they had, the Shenandoah had 20 cells inside that held the helium. She never had hydrogen. She was always a helium filled because it was less dangerous. But helium did not have the lift that hydrogen had. Am I seeing waves back? Somebody waving. Oh, hi, whoever's back there. And but she had 20 cells. Interestingly, these gas cells, how they had to make those for the best permeable material was the intestines of cattle. They called it gold beaters. And people sat in factories, women sat in factories. And of course, they kill these oxen or cattle, and they had to separate this very thin lining from the intestine of the cow. And they would stitch those together to make those gas cells. It's crazy. I'll show you a gas cell here in a minute. But I think it's fascinating that anybody would even think to do that. So here is the Shenandoah, the Navy's first rigid airship. Here's her crew. And you can see the hangar there on the left, this giant hangar. And there she is. You can see, look at the people down below. You can see the comparison, the size of people compared to the bow of that airship. And I think, do we have McCrary in this picture? I think we do. We're going to meet McCrary here in a second. Just another picture, the size of the Lakehurst. Now the Titanic, just for comparison, was I think she was what, 833 feet long, the Titanic. So she would have fit easily inside this hangar. You can imagine, because it's 966 feet there, the size of that. But these hangars were massive. They were the largest outdoor structures that were ever built at the time. No back. I know there's somebody out there. All right. Here she is leaving the Lakehurst hangar for the very first time in September. You can read that. You can see her tail coming out of there. Imagine the excitement when they finally brought her out to fly. And these are the gas tanks that held the fuel to run the engines. And look at that, you see the narrow walkway there. I don't know, if I point, can you see stuff if I'm doing that? I don't think you can you? No. Anyway, you can see the narrow walkway and those gas, or I'm sorry, those were the gasoline.
We can see your cursor, I think.
Oh, you can? Can you see that? Moving
yes.
around? Oh, okay, well, good. I have a pointer then. Thank you, Pam.
The white one must be airported.
I'm sorry, what? But anyway, here's the internal structure of that airship. Now notice these girders right in here, because in a little while you're going to see one of those in a different light. But right here, these are the crew's bunks, and they did what they called hot bunking. Hot bunking meant they didn't ever get cold because they didn't have enough crew cots for every crew member to lie down at the same time, nor would they have, of course, because somebody had to fly the airship. So the crew's bunks, that's what these are. So one shift would sleep while one shift, or how many ever they had, I really can't figure out how many shifts they had. But anyway, so there was always somebody in a bunk. And here we go. These are the officers that were assigned to the Shenandoah. This fellow right here is a fellow I'd like to introduce you to. He had quite a career in Navy history. Listen to this, and this is a lengthy list. His name is Captain Frank McCrary. He served in the Spanish-American War in the Philippines. Well, at first he was a graduate, a 1901 graduate of the Naval Academy at Annapolis. He served in the Spanish-American War in the Philippines, World War II in Ireland. He was in charge of all the US naval air stations. He was the CO of the 1st Torpedo Flotilla, the CO of the Atlantic Fleet in 1913. He was sent to Ohio for LTA training, LTA lighter than air training, and ever after he was identified with naval aviation. He was the first naval officer to qualify as a free balloon and LTA pilot. He was the XO, the commanding officer of NAS Pensacola, where the operation of that DN-1, the first dirigible that we saw a few minutes ago, and he was qualified in seaplanes. He was the third pilot to land on a carrier at sea. He served twice as the commanding officer at NAS North Island, once in 1921 and again in 1927. He was the CO of the Shenandoah and brought it on her first cross-country trip from Lakehurst. My housemaid is coming in here. Sorry, she's going to bark. And interestingly to me, most interesting was he became the first commander of the first aircraft carrier. Hi, Kalia. From the USS Langley, got sidetracked there. In 1930, he was the CO of the Saratoga. And when she came into San Diego, she was the largest ship to ever enter at that time, to ever enter our bay. And that was Commander McCrary doing that. He was awarded the Navy Cross in World War I and Naval Commendation Medal in World War II. He was recalled out of retirement to CO the NAS Alameda up north, Northern California. He retired to Coronado and died in 1952. He's buried here at Fort Rosecrans. And last January, I had published a couple of articles, or an article on the Shenandoah in the Coronado newspaper here. And it got the attention of this lovely woman down here at the bottom. You see her holding the picture. And the newspaper called and said, we got this call from a Mary Ann Thomas here in Coronado who saw your article in the paper. She says that she's the daughter of the commanding officer. And I said, that can't be. This guy was born in 18, get my date here, in 1879. How could his daughter still be living? I've had so many pleasures of meeting adult children of former lightkeepers in this history work that I do. But to meet the daughter of the first commanding officer of an airship was quite a thrill. So I contacted Mary Ann, and I went out to her house, did a wonderful interview, and we put a second article in the paper. Now, unfortunately, at this moment, I can't introduce you, but I would like to introduce you to her grandson and her daughter who are here. And we'll do that at the end. I'm sorry we can't ask questions now because of this format, but you will meet Mary Ann, and I was so thrilled to meet with her. So moving on, here is a picture of Mary Ann's father in the control car of the Shenandoah. Lovely picture. I guess he didn't smile very much, and Mary Ann said that he did not like to be asked to smile. Very serious fellow, but imagine all that he did. Now here's a picture of Shenandoah moored to her high mast. She's at Lakehurst here. Look at the car underneath. Look at the size of this thing. And the gangway that's open there at the top, heading into the top. There's an elevator here. Let's see if I can get my arrow there. The elevator is here. And here's the Shenandoah moored to her high mast at the fleet oiler, the Potoco. And they tried to do this, but the airships that followed Shenandoah were a little bit longer. And they had a lot of trouble mooring these to the ships because the tail wanted to hit the water. It never did, but it was a concern for them. And Zachary Lansdowne took over command of the airship from McCrary. Now I look at this date, I see June 1924. My picture's in the way, I can't see what I wrote there, but you can see some of the equipment there that he would use. This fellow is going to die in that very space. And it just kills me. You know, I think part of my passion for these airships, as well as ships with sailing vessels coming across Cape Horn, I just think of the bravery of these men, because I'm such a chicken. I would never have thought to do this or would have ever done it personally. And I'm fascinated with men and later women who did. Here's a picture of Shenandoah coming into North Island, and they didn't have an experienced ground crew, and they let her rear gondola, she had two gondolas, let the rear gondola hit the ground. So they have to do some fixing. But interestingly, in the lower picture on the very right, here is Admiral Moffett. And he was a real proponent. He wanted to get these airships out there and use them for Navy. They would assist the fleet, the floating fleet. And here's Shenandoah moored at a barren North Island here in San Diego. You can see the circle here. This is the landing circle or the mooring circle, depending on if she's coming in or going out. And you can see San Diego Bay back here. Not much going on here yet. Here's another picture of her. She's heading out. Oh, I was going to ask you a question here. Let's see. You can see the peninsula of Point Loma going here on the left. And over here is the Whaler's Bight, where they would bring the carcasses of whales in. And then there's something missing in the harbor, two big things. Can you think what they are? I know you can't answer, but we're missing some major geological things here. And
Shelter Island.
Shelter, yes, and Harbor Island. Neither one built yet. So fun picture. And she's heading out to San Pedro to meet the fleet and do some exercises there. All right, now we look at the crash of the USS Shenandoah. She was caught in a summer squall. And I looked up, I've got this wonderful book from 1956 on weather. And it tells me that a squall is, I had to look some of these up because I thought, well, what is a squall? It is a narrow band of intense thunderstorms, and it shows up about 10 minutes ahead of the rain. So this Shenandoah came down about 30 miles from my hometown in Ohio. And I go back here every summer when there's not a pandemic. I meet my girlfriends from high school and we go on a trip every summer. But we didn't get to this year, bummer. But when Nancy meets me, she knows that I've got to go down Interstate 77 and go into Ava and check out where the airship came down. She fell apart in 3 different sections. And so I think you can read that. Okay, whoops, let me turn that off. Sorry. But if you go into a restaurant back there, a McDonald's, anything, it was the biggest thing that ever happened back there. And so there's still photographs on the wall of this airship incident. Here's a picture of Shenandoah. She was called the Daughter of the Stars. And there she is on the ground. Look at the cars there and the people. It was quite an event in the day. And here's the aft section. You see the fin back here. And one of her big engines. Look how big they are compared to the people. Here's another one. This is interesting to me to see this man pilfering a piece of there's that girder I was telling you about, keep an eye on. Remember, we looked at the interior. It's so hard not to have conversation back and forth. I know I admire all teachers who have to teach on Zoom, but that was quite a crash. There we go. There's another section. That's the 3rd piece. That's her forward section. You can see her nose here. And this is the crew. Here's Lansdowne over here. And he died. You remember we saw him in the control car? And the control car broke apart from the airship first, and those 14 died, but there were 29 survivors of this. And as I said, when I go back home, I want to go through Ava, Ohio. This is Teresa Rayner up here at the top holding the airship. Behind her is this trailer. Now, it's probably been it was 2016 that we were on one of these trips, and I didn't know about this museum yet. I didn't know that it was there. And we stopped at the cafe because we have to look at the pictures, right? Because I'm back there. And the pictures were gone. And I thought, wait a minute, where are the pictures that you've always had here? And she explained to us that they had been given to the Shenandoah Museum. And I said, what museum? So you go down this little road. I was in Caldwell, and about 7 miles from Caldwell is this little town, Ava. And that's where one of the sections came down. But anyway, here's this lovely museum. And I thought it was going to be some dumpy little place and it would be hard to see, but it's beautifully done inside, very organized. And here's my friend Nancy that always picks me up. And this is the memorial that the US government put to the survivors and to the crew of Shenandoah. And here's an interior picture of the museum, but look at the girder there. See that? Interestingly, the forward section kept moving. It wouldn't come down. It still had the gas cells in it, and there were sailors on board. So we'd always heard that there was this little theory that a farmer went out and shot the envelope to bring it down. The tether line was too short for anybody to reach. So the farmer took his shotgun and hit the thing to bring it down, saved those guys. And so I thought, oh, that's just rumor or hearsay. But on the wall here, I don't have a picture of it here, but on the wall in this museum is a picture of the US government official interviewing this guy who actually did fire that weapon to bring down the forward section of the airship. So I thought that was interesting. All righty, we're going to move on. At the same time that the Shenandoah was being built, the R-38 or ZR-2 was being built in England. She was never delivered to America. I bet you can guess why. Here's a picture of her. I'll tell you that in a minute. This is the R-38 built at Cardington, England. She was to be ZR-2, Zeppelin Rigid number 2 after the Shenandoah, but there you have it. She crashed on its 4th trial. Now, sadly, we had the best of our airmen and the best of England's airmen aboard this vessel when it went down. So we lost a number of those people. Most of the crew died in this one. It was just horrible. And including in this incident, wait, I think I have that coming up here. I think I do. We'll go ahead and look at this slide. Here's a picture of what would have been an American airship, the ZR-2, at her shed in Howden. Just look how big they are. It's amazing to me. And here she is in the air on her first trial. Here's the control car of that. Look at that. You see how they had to bring these ships down? They had tether lines, and a ground crew would actually pull them down. They over the next few years, they invented new and better ways to move her along into her hangar, into these airships. But I think that's fun to see. And here she is. The airship buckled in the middle and the ends started to droop. She had structural failure. It's a picture that's in England, in the estuary of the whole river. And another picture of the wreckage of R-38. And interestingly, one day in July, when Philip Hinshaw, that we met earlier, just before we started, some of us, Philip and I were walking around the cemetery after the Bennington commemoration, and I came along and saw this. The picture on the left is the only thing I took a picture of at the time. And I said, what in the heck? What was the ZR-2? At the time, I didn't know what it was. But the headstone reads, as you can see here, Charles Ivan Aller. And I thought this thing said Ivan Maller because I couldn't read this very well. And I checked with the office at the National Cemetery here, and they said, we don't have anybody. And then so we realized it was Ivan Aller. But anyway, he was killed in this disaster of that airship. So we looked at that, and I remember saying to Philip, I've never heard of the ZR-2. I wonder what that was. And years passed, and I'd go up and try to find this thing again, and I could not find this because the only picture I had taken was this lower one on the left. Well, about 6 months ago, I was up there looking around again, trying to find this guy's stone, and I couldn't find it anywhere. I was looking just for this little low thing. Well, I saw this tall monument sitting nearly at the corner of the same area where the Bennington monument is. And I saw this tall thing, and I just happened to walk over, and I said to myself, gee, I wonder who was buried here that got this nice tall memorial. And lo and behold, that was our sailor from the ZR-2 disaster. So there he is. See all these funny little stories that show up. And this is the USS Los Angeles, built in Germany. It was war reparation. We had already committed to buying this thing, so it continued to be built. It was delivered in 1924. And there she is coming into Lakehurst. Look at the size of that hangar. Crazy. This is the engine gondola of the Los Angeles. This is the only airship of the 5 that did not meet a disastrous end. They scrapped her, realizing it wasn't going to work, this airship program. But interestingly, look at this sailor here, and he had to climb this ladder into the airship, and it was very, very noisy, you can imagine, in these little pods. And the Los Angeles was built sort of as a trial airship to use as these gliders could drop. The gliders, remember, an airship could go out, they were reconnaissance vessels, they were looking for subs or just assisting the fleet in whatever way they were going to do at the time. And the Los Angeles was the first to carry airplanes. So you can see this glider being put in here. The gliders didn't work well, so they new planes evolved from that. This is curious, this high mast, look at the Los Angeles here. Can you imagine being on board that airship? Somebody must have been, they don't leave them empty. Isn't that something though? This was just one of 4 incidents that plagued the operation of this airship, even though she had she was scrapped in the end, she still had some trouble. And here she is in flight. Look at the little airplanes. You can see the size of the airplanes compared to the size of the airship. Here's another one coming in here. So I think they're coming in to land. They would pull them in, they'd hit the trapeze. They had a hook on the top. These little Sparrowhawk airplanes had a hook on top, and they would fly and get at the same speed the airship was going. Uh-oh, here comes a cat now, knocking all my books over. Get down, you. Sorry. And let's see. So let's go to the next picture. I like her national star here toward the end, the bow there. I mean, the bow. And now we've got the Akron. Oh, I think that was it on Los Angeles. There we go. We'll talk about that in another minute. And this is the 4th one. This is the USS Akron. And she was launched, as you can see, in 31, and she was built specifically to carry fighter planes to be launched and recovered while she was in flight. Here she is in the hangar, the Goodyear Air Dock, they called it. That's in Akron. Some of these big buildings are still there, and it's so much fun to go in them. They're just massive in size. Look at this ring. This is the first ring down here that they put up here. There's some really wonderful videos online to see some of these airships being built. So you might sometime go and see. And here's Rear Admiral William Moffett delivering the address as they christened the Akron. And in fewer than 2 years, Moffat will lose his life on this airship. He was a real proponent. He wanted to do this so badly, to have airships be useful. Here's the Akron. I love all these pictures, but look at the size of her. Now you can see she's on a stub mast here, what they call it. The lower mast was called a stub mast. And this is inside one of those engine rooms. At least this one, the one on the Shenandoah and the third one, they were small pods. Now these engine rooms are much bigger. But and they're inside the airship now too. So they were put. And this is an incident that took place here in San Diego when the Akron landed at what was called Kearney Field at the time, Camp Kearney, and which is Miramar Naval Air Station today. Well, not naval, it's, what is it now? Marines. Anyway, so she's out there and she got caught, the wind picked her nose and scrambled it up, but she came in first to try to land, and the ground crew, again, not experienced with these airships, could not hold on to the tether lines. So the tether lines, these guys held on. So when the airship made its second pass to come in, dropped her ropes, the ground commander said, hold those lines and don't let them go, so they could pull that airship down. Remember that this is just a field that was not meant for airships necessarily. So they had inexperienced ground crews. And so these fellows held on. There were 3 or 4 of them initially that held on. One fell from 15 feet, he let go and he survived. But these others continued to go, they held on, 2 others, and these fellows dropped from, I think 400 or something feet, I can't remember. They were not able to hold on, and those 2 died. And then a third one, this fellow we see on the right, survived by hanging on to a toggle that was on the line, and he was able to be lifted into the airship. And the crash of the Akron in 1933. There's no images of the airship. There are a few after, when they went back to look for wreckage, and they found those. I just didn't put them in there for the sake of time. But she broke up rapidly and sank into the stormy Atlantic. Now look at this. 73 people died in this one. We think of Hindenburg as being the big disaster, but it's because people witnessed it. There were camera crews going on. But by comparison, Hindenburg lost 36 to Akron 73. So really the Akron was the greatest, deadliest really. And these are the 3 survivors. And we're going to see this fellow again on the Mekong. He survives the Mekong when it goes down in the Pacific. That's crazy. And I saw a report one time that said, he said, I've had enough of these airships. And that's what he said. So we'll see him in a minute. And this is the Barnegat Light right here, lighthouse. Always fun to see. And the last of the great naval airships was the USS Makon, ZRS. We've added the S now for Scout, Zeppelin Rigid Scouting, number 5. She was, you can see, 785 feet. But look at her short life. She was commissioned in 1933 and lost in 1935. So these airships had a really short career. Here she is under construction at Goodyear. And William Moffett christened it. I'm sorry, I'm doing 3 things at once here. And this is one of my favorite pictures. This is the USS Makon at Nes Sunnyvale. After Moffett's death in the Akron, they renamed this field from Sunnyvale to Moffett Field, which is what we know it as today. And here she is. Isn't that a beautiful picture? You can see these tracks. They have now a new way of pulling these airships along to bring them into the hangar. So they're relying on fewer men or ground crew to bring a ship in with tether lines. But once she's down, they connect to these lines. It's another whole thing. We could do an entire talk just on how they move these airships around on the ground. But this is Moffett Field now. I'll show you a picture in a minute of what that looks like today. So look how barren it all is here. Here she is with her airplanes, her Sparrowhawks heading toward the trapeze. You can see her outboard engines here. And this is a photograph that came to me just 2 weeks ago. Michael Sheridan, I believe he's here. I haven't been introduced to him yet, but we've been emailing. Another friend of mine, ours from Sons of the American Revolution, Fred Hall, introduced me to this family whose father was on board the Mekong. Every flight the Mekong made except for 2, including its last flight when it went down in the Pacific. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'm hoping that we'll meet whatever family, but you can see how many siblings he had. Michael, Patrick, Jenny, Eileen, Regina, Lizbeth, and I don't know, that's how he spelled it, if it's Elizabeth or Lizbeth, Bridget and Monica. And the father was Vincent Sheridan, you can see there, and the grandson Virgil may be here tonight. So we'll introduce them after. We'll all meet them together. And here we are inside Hangar 1 at Moffett Field. You can see the cover is here. And this is me standing in front of that, or behind it kind of, up in Mountain View, California, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, they all kind of run together. So here we are. That's what they did, take that cover off. But it was just, I just am amazed when I go inside these things and see the size of them. I've been to the air dock in Canton, and anyway, all righty, or in Akron rather. Now this is interesting. My son works for Google up in San Jose, Mountain View actually. And this is what it looks like today. Here's the hangar back here that we were looking at. In that picture I said was my favorite picture. There's the hangar. Look how it's all built up now. Over here is Hangar 2, smaller hangar. But these are still visible today. You can go inside. If you talk to the right people, you can go inside. There's a lovely museum there that has a lot of the information about the hangar and the Mekong. And here we go. The crash of the Mekong went into the Pacific off Monterey. And there were 2 deaths, 81 survivors in this one. Interestingly, on the Akron, they did not have life preservers on because they thought they were just going to go out for a quick little trial trip and come back. And that's when it went down. There's so much more I could tell you on these, but just for the sake of time, we can't. But anyway, it was interesting. The lighthouse keeper at Point Sur Lighthouse saw the ship flailing out on the water. Now the entire fleet, the Pacific Fleet, is out on the water here because again, the Mekong was out there doing exercises with the fleet. So, but the Thomas Henderson's son, we don't have a picture of him. This is the lightkeeper himself, but he saw this thing having some trouble, and they were inexperienced with, or not inexperienced, I'm sorry. There was a problem with the tail fin, and they took her out on this exercise without fixing that. They had every intention of fixing whatever that little problem or big problem was, but it turns out that may have been part of the problem. She went down. But the fleet was on site heading toward San Francisco, and she splashed. It was a very gentle landing, as I understand it. But interestingly, Vincent Sheridan, whose family is with us tonight, missed that flight because someone owed him a trip. He can tell us about it a little bit more, but somebody owed him a favor. And so he went on that flight, but the fellow survived. So we'll be glad to know. Here's just a fun little picture of what that trapeze looked like. Here's the hook, and this trapeze then lifts into the airship body. And here she is underwater. There've been a number of discoveries now where here's the airplane underwater off Monterey. So, and here, look at this, there's still some paint coverings, but there's a couple of videos online that you can see where these cameras are actually going down. Now, about 3 years ago, I had a chance to go out and look at these cameras from the vessel at Monterey Aquarium, but the weather was too bad. I had gone up north and the weather was too bad to go out. And actually I was kind of glad because I'm scared to death to be on the ocean in a boat or otherwise. I told you I was afraid of everything. And this is fun. These are pictures that Michael Sheridan, the son of Vincent here, sent to me 2 weeks ago. This is a picture of Mekong with all her crew signatures. His father, Vincent, is right here. That's his signature. Here's a picture of the crew, and I believe they are in Hangar 1 here at Sunnyvale. You can see the control car here. But I think he told me, oh, I think his father is back here, but maybe he can tell us in a minute. And so that is the end of my pictures because I wanted to have a few minutes to talk with our families that are here. But lives, materials, and dreams were lost. And they really wanted to keep going and build another airship. These are really experimental craft, but they wanted to keep going. But something came in that was built here in San Diego. Can anyone guess what it was? A long-range airplane built at Convair called the, if you're saying it, it's the PBY. So when these PBYs, these long-range airplanes came in, we didn't need airships anymore. We've got planes that can fly those distances. So there you have it. These are just some badges I've picked up over the years. This is interesting, this Mekong, this trapeze. I thought, what a goofy looking symbol. But this is to represent the airship. The fat fellow is to represent the airship. And the skinny guy is the airplane, and he's on a trapeze because they called that paraphernalia to get those airplanes in the trapeze. So that's what that's all about. And they had that design painted on the Sparrowhawks at first. The Navy said, nah, we're going to take that off. They didn't want it. They wanted all the airplanes to be uniform in color. So they took them off. So anyway, that's the end of my pictures. So Eric, if you would be kind enough to maybe see if we can go back to our audience, our group. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. I'm sure there was a bunch I left out here, but there always is. So we'll wait and see. I'm going to go back to this picture and see if he can identify his father there. I think he told me and I didn't make note of that. So thank you. I hope that was interesting. There's so much more we could tell you about airships if we had the time to do it. So are you there, Eric? You working it?
You're live now.
I'm gonna take a drink of water.
Can you hear us now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm the picture of the crew. Top row, very third from the left is Vincent William Sheridan.
Right here. Right here.
That's correct.
Standing. Oh, hello there. Nice to meet you.
Hi there. Very good. Great to meet you.
Hello.
I got
This is your
my brother and a couple of my sisters here.
Oh, good. Okay.
Monica.
Oh, you're over here. This is all of you. Oh, hello. Who is this?
So it's Michael, Patrick, Monica, Bridget, and then Monica's husband, Jim.
Say hi.
Oh, we can talk to her. I unmuted her.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can you, it's nice to meet all of you. It's a funny way to do it, not in person, but it's a great way if we can't have anything else, right? But can you tell me anything that you remember about your father, his days with the Mekong? Did he talk much about it, or was it history by that point and you just lived your lives?
He retired in May of 1949, and Pat and I were just 9 years old at the time, so the girls weren't even born then. So we don't remember a lot about it. He did say he thought it was the best service in the Navy, the Armed Forces. On board ship, there's a wonderful galley where they had bakeries and all kinds of wonderful meals. In fact, he said the day it crashed, they had lots of pies. And as the crew were sitting on the bow, waiting to be rescued, they were passing out pies.
No.
He told me once that the two that perished panicked and jumped into the water.
That's, yeah, the radio man. And he lost his glasses and he couldn't see either. And he thought he was closer to the water than he was.
Yeah,
So the story goes, but interesting.
But after the war and before he retired, we can remember him. They used to fly the smaller I think he called them K9s out over the Pacific as on their patrols. And he would fly over our property in Los Gatos, California. And he'd get quite low. And we can remember these, they were smaller than the Makon, but they're still quite large. Airships went over and they'd have a circle around it. And they go onto the duty. In fact, I have a photograph someplace with our property with probably my brother and I, and maybe one sister, little blonde head kids waving up at this thing.
Oh,
A picture that he took from the air. So I don't know a lot more. Maybe my brother does or my sisters remember stories, but.
you're welcome to speak if you like, brothers and sisters.
Hi, this is Patrick. I know that during the war, they spent a lot of time down in French Guiana, where he was stationed for several years, I believe. And they were flying missions over the southern part of the Caribbean, looking for Nazi subs.
Okay, yeah, these were blimps. This was not the Makon, obviously. But yeah, I have a model of a K9 blimp in my workroom. So a crew member gave me, but he was, he was just not just, but he was a crew member.
I think they remember K9 through K28, but he always referred to as K9, so I don't know.
Yeah, they all had names, styles. Okay, well, it's wonderful to see you and meet you. Thank you for being with us tonight. I wish we had more time to chat because it's fascinating to me to meet families of these events. Now I know that I think Marianne is here, and I wonder if we can get to Marianne's picture and her grandson. Thank you, Sheridan.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
Okay. I live in Edgewood, New Mexico, and I have met a lady here who grew up in Lakehurst. And she and her brother used to go around the old Lakehurst Air Naval Station where the Hindenburg went down. And she's my age, but when she was little, they found a lot of pieces and parts of the aircraft and things that fell out of the aircraft. And there's a museum there now. I have not been there, but she tells me that it contains a lot of the stuff that she and her brother found and a lot of other things from the Hindenburg.
Wow, it's fun.
It might be a good field trip.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Lakehurst. I've never been there, but it's on my to-do list.
Oh, good job. Me too.
Thank you. Okay. All righty. Now, if we can find Mary Ann.
Okay, so
I have to have Eric help with that part. I'm
so
out of
Karen,
control.
Karen, if you want to stop sharing,
Okay.
so go to the
Stop share.
sharing button and just, there we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Now
Now.
we're back to the Hollywood squares here. So
I think we look like the Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch.
I'm looking for, I don't see you. Where's Mary Ann? She's not on my screen that I can see.
Oh, no, wait.
I see her daughter. And
Karen, she's there. She's muted.
okay.
Mom,
Unmute.
can you click on your square and click unmute?
Shannon, while she's doing that, can you tell us something? I understand you're a naval historian. What can you tell us about your great-grandfather's experiences?
From what I've gathered, he flew the Shenandoah, of course, but he right. No, he drove some ships down. It's blanking on me.
Oh, aircraft carriers.
Yeah, he drove an aircraft carrier through like a really wide river. I remember that he kind of cleared the way.
Right.
Okay.
And into the Coronado Bay.
Yeah, Coronado Bay. Yeah.
Here in San Diego, you mean?
Yes.
It was actually, Shannon, it was a very narrow path because at the time the bay was riddled with shoals and high spots. So they had to continually dredge, and to bring that big aircraft carrier in, the Langley at the time was one of the biggest, that and the Lexington, Saratoga. But yes, you're right. When he came through that channel, San Diego. Go ahead, keep talking. That's wonderful.
I think my piece is done. here.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. You keep up on that history, because when my generation finishes, we need kids like you to carry on this wonderful digging of history. And you've certainly got some stories to tell from your own family. And so this is your mother next to you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember your grandfather? Frank?
No, he died in 52.
You weren't born yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I came around in 69. So I missed him. I inherited his eyes, apparently. That's so I got his call sign in the Navy was Squinch.
Squinch.
And yes, because the McCrarys have no eyes, which my mother and I share. So when we smile, our eyes disappear, which is great for glaring. But yeah, so we all got Squinch's eyes. That's what I inherited. So
that's cute.
So sorry, I'm just going to try to give my mom a little technical help one more time. So Mom, if you go on your actual square in your
Oh, I see her. There
Yeah.
she is right there. Is that, hi, Marianne. Can you see us? She's muted again, it looks like.
Yeah, so can you click, if you go to the bottom left of your screen, Mom, do you see the microphone?
Click it.
Yes.
There you go. Hello, Mom.
There you go. There's Marianne Thomas, daughter of Frank McCrary, and who did all those amazing things. And by the way, he's one of the heroes, the Avenue of the Heroes in Coronado. He had his banner out for a while.
Yes.
Marianne, tell us a little bit. I know that you said to me in our interview that, of course, the airship days were long gone by the time you were born, but that you can remember a fun incident where your mother wanted to take a ride on Shenandoah and your father said absolutely not. But Admiral Jackson changed the plan. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, that was in Lakehurst, and the airships were very, very new. That's the first one, the Shenandoah. And my father brought it across country to Coronado. And my mother wanted to go up in it because the Secretary of the Navy and Admiral Jackson were all there. Now, all of these people were very good friends of both my parents. So my mother was a very strong opinion lady, and she wanted to go up with them. And my father said no. He said, it's not safe. You can't go up there. You'll unbalance, which was all a bunch of malarkey, but he didn't want her on there. So my mother, being my mother, went to Admiral Jackson, who was her close friend. And he said, oh, of course you are coming up as my guest. Yes, please come up with me. So my father, and nobody else knew anything different, said, okay, but you have to sit in the back. You have to sit in the back with all the equipment because otherwise the whole thing will be unbalanced. When they came back down from the flight, the ship, they had trouble getting the back ropes down and it was bouncing around and bouncing around. And my father said, I'm going to teach her a lesson. I'm going to leave her up there bouncing for a couple of hours and that'll teach her to go over my head. And he did, and she did. And when they opened the doors after they finally got it down, lo and behold, the first one out was Admiral Jackson, who had gone back to talk to my mother. And there's great difficulty at that time.
You probably got in trouble for that, didn't you?
Right.
What a great
By her
story.
husband, I mean. That's cute. Now, tell us who your first boy, when you were 5 years old, who your first boyfriend was.
John McCain.
Isn't that fun?
His grandfather was a very close friend of my father's.
Wow. Now, tell us about the World War II event that was planned in your living room.
Oh, what was that? Was that
about Doolittle?
Resident? What did they plan in the living room?
Doolittle's raid.
It was. Yeah, it was Doolittle raid. And my father was very, very good friends with Admiral Nimitz. And I was little. We lived in Alameda during the war. And I was little, and going to the Nimitz house was like going to fairyland. It was on Yerba Buena, right underneath the bridge. And I'd sit outside and watch that all for hours.
Isn't that something?
Wow.
Yeah. It was interesting. She gave me a little tour around her house because she lives in the home that he retired in. Her father retired in a lovely little place in Coronado on Olive Street. And she's got the case in her dining room of his early epaulets, their shoulder pads, and his cocked Navy hat, those early ones that they wore. And it's just, it's a fascinating piece of history. And of course, she's got other trinkets around, pictures that we don't see, that we can't find. Interestingly, a fellow that lives across the street from me he works for the Navy. He's not active duty, but he works for the Navy, and he has Moffett Field in his docket. Now, he brought me all these things about Moffett Field, about McCrary, and it's just funny where you end up meeting these people that have some kind of connection to something you're interested in. I'm sure you've all had experiences like that. Let's see, what other fun story can you tell us?
Well, there's just one other story, and it involves Admiral Moffett. He asked my father to take the Shenandoah up on a PR visit to the Arctic, like Admiral Byrd, because in those days, the services had to do things to attract attention to themselves to get funds from the government. And my father said he wouldn't do it if he was requested to do it. He said, this is not safe. This is not a safe thing to do for this airship. And he said, if you order me, I will do it. But if you request it, I will not endanger the crew. And that was not what Admiral Moffett wanted to hear. So my father was relieved of command of the Shenandoah and given to Lansdowne, which was, unfortunate for Lansdowne, because about the next time or two it was taken up is when it was blown up.
Yeah, when it went down. Yeah. Interestingly, there was an experience at Lakehurst where they were storing the two airships. Shenandoah came in from her trip to San Diego, and when she got there, the Akron was sitting beside her in the hangar. But they didn't have enough helium at the time to inflate both airships. So they hung, because Los Angeles was new. Did I say Los Angeles? Oh gosh, which one was it? I get those two mixed up. Anyway, I think it was the Los Angeles sitting beside her. And they had to, they bled the helium from Shenandoah and pumped it into the Akron. And the Akron had some engines that were built in Germany. And I hope I'm remembering this correctly, but they had some trouble. So they had to bring the Akron back in, take the helium again out of her, put it back in Shenandoah to continue these flights. And it was not long after that, of course, that the Shenandoah met her demise over Ohio landscape. So anyway, just so many interesting stories. Another one I forgot to mention too, when we were looking at Lakehurst, that airfield had been, let me get this piece of information here. Because a second fellow survived the Mekong. Let's see. Oh, I hope. Oh, yeah. Lakehurst Maxfield Field, it was called. And it had been its location for, let's see, he lost his life when the when the R-38 went down. So that the second airship, the fellow that Lakehurst was named for, and his name was Commander Lewis H. Maxfield, and so who lost his life when the R-38 went down over Hull, England. The Navy bought the property in 1921 for use as an airship station and renamed it NAS Lakehurst. The long history, it had been used as an ammunition test range. Then it was used by the Army, this airfield, by the Army as Camp Kendrick during World War I. And ultimately named Lakehurst for its location, but it was originally Maxfield too. So for this fellow, so he died in that same incident where our sailor is buried, our airman is buried at Fort Rosecrans, same incident. So there's just so many little pieces to throw in here, but for the sake of time, I'm so grateful.
Karen, I think you and I have talked about this. I had the opportunity to meet a survivor of the Shenandoah
crash. How'd you remember this?
Yeah, I did. He lived here in San Diego, and through a mutual friend, we were introduced, but he really chose not to talk about it. You know, it was tough time in his life,
You can imagine.
obviously,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I'm not sure if we have any of the Naval Airship Association people with us tonight, but they have a wonderful publication that they put out called Noon Balloon, and it's a wonderful.
And Karen has been published in there, by the way.
Oh, yes, we have from Anne. Let's see. Yeah, here's her story right here with her father, the pictures we've seen. But anyway, I recommend that if you are interested in these airships anymore, join the group, join the association, Naval Airship Association. They are hanging on like many museums just by a thread, trying to stay afloat financially. But these guys know so much. In fact, they are responsible for 4 really great videos that they've put together. You can see those online, or you can contact the Naval Air Association online and get copies of those. But they are fantastic pieces of early videos, early film strips of these airships doing their thing. And so anyway, I suppose I should stop talking now. I appreciate Eric's good help as our host tonight. Eric is the president of Ocean Beach Historical Society, and Kitty that we met, who introduced me, is the president of La Playa Trail Association. Connie is there somewhere. She's our former president. And so we've got 2 really great history groups in Point Loma preserving this history. And I said to Kitty a day or 2 ago, I said, imagine if we weren't all digging up. Kitty just did a piece on the Jennings house out in Point Loma that was so good. And if we were not recording these pieces of history, and this is what I said, Shannon, this is your job to do after us, you see, or even now, but to record these bits of history so they don't get lost. And that's what our goal is. Anyway, thank you all for coming tonight. I wish we had some more time to talk to Sheridan family. I appreciate you being with us. And Marianne, your family here. You know, Marianne lost 2 brothers to war. One was a pilot. I've got that written down here, but Marianne, maybe you could tell them. This is very interesting because 3 of her family are buried at Fort Rosecrans, her father and 2 brothers. Marianne, tell them about your 2 brothers real quickly, if you wouldn't mind.
Also, my mother was a chief yeomanette in the First World War. It's where she met my father over in Paris.
For heaven's sake.
So they're all 4 buried over there.
Gosh. But your brothers, one came to San Diego to help build Top Gun.
Yeah, well, they were just starting it. He and Duke Cunningham, they were just starting all the plans for that. Yes, my brother was at the time the youngest ever promoted to commander. He was a torpedo bomber on the Enterprise and a test pilot and for Grumman, and he was killed at Miramar during a testing of a jet called the Demon, which really earned that name. It killed about all of its test pilots, and he was the first Shannon, of which my grandson Shannon is named. And then I have another brother, Bob. Now my youngest brother, Bob, was 11 years older than I am, and which is why I'm still around because my father was 57 when I was born. And Bob was my buddy. When I had my 4th birthday, I only invited his friends because they were my friends. And I had all these 15-year-old boys in my house for my 4th birthday. But he was on the Franklin during the war and he got the Silver Star. The Franklin was hit by a kamikaze and he helped save the ship, which was a really big deal. And it somehow got it back to the United States and got fixed. Is there anything else I need to tell about them?
So, well, it's just interesting. And her husband was a JAG officer in the Navy. So they've got, you know, this is our Navy in action. These are our active duty people. I'd like to close with one little quick paragraph about Marianne's father. on my father's, this is Marianne telling me the story. On my father's last birthday in October 1951, my Coronado High School girlfriends and I, affectionately known as the Toastites, gave him a birthday party here at his house. This prestigious naval officer, whose emotions were always in check, was so moved that he cried. And the phone rings, and Marianne answers it with the required greeting, Captain McCrary's quarters. And that, my friends, is the end of the talk. I love that. Imagine. So if there's any questions out there.
A quick note about the Macon.
Mhm.
In 1934, when
Who's talking?
President Roosevelt was on the USS Houston, coming from Hawaii back to the United States. And
Okay.
of course, it's not supposed to be well known where he's at. And it was a very overcast day when all of a sudden one of the Sparrowhawk aircraft from the Macon flew overhead and found him. And it made the captain of the USS Houston very, very furious that this happened. But Roosevelt was thrilled that this American technology found this warship out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And was even happier when the Macon was able to drop current newspapers on the deck of that destroyer. And so he was very excited about this technology that the United States had.
Yeah, he was surprised to see the airship over his vessel, his floating vessel. Interesting. I think that was the trip when, because I guess Roosevelt was a stamp collector, and they canceled a stamp on the airship and sent it down, however they got it down to the ship. So, but then they got in trouble when they got home for doing that. So it's just silly.
Yeah, the Navy didn't like it, but the president loved it.
Yes. Yep. So any other questions?
Karen,
Yeah,
which
Kim.
which vessel did you say was constructed in Cardington?
It was the R-38 or the ZR-2.
How did it get across to the United States?
It never did because it crashed.
Oh, it crashed there.
It
Oh,
crashed, yeah, in the whole river, in the estuary there.
oh, that.
Yeah, on its fourth trial, it went down. And it had, like I said, the best of our airmen because they were over there training because they wanted to build up this airship program. Yep, that's why. But, you know, a couple of these airships made it all the way, you know, they made long distance, long range trips.
Over 5,000 miles.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Do we have any of the naval airship people with us tonight?
Me.
Yeah, you're a member. That's right, Pam Kelly. A couple of the fellows are going to try to be
So
here.
am I.
Yeah? Are you a member too?
I'm a member of both the Naval Airship Association and of the Lighter Than Air Society in Akron.
All right. Have you been to Lakehurst or to Akron?
Well, I live just north of Akron, so I've been at the Goodyear Air Dock there.
Okay.
I've not had a chance to visit Lakehurst because every time I've been in the area, I've not had the 2-week lead time to get the clearance to get on the active military base.
To go in. Yeah. You know the movie, what was it? It'll probably not come to my brain. They filmed a fighting scene, Officer and a Gentleman. They filmed a scene in the Lakehurst hangar. It was a fight scene, you know, a boxing thing in that airship. But I didn't know it at the time when I saw that movie, and I keep thinking I'll go back and look at it, but I never do. So anyway, okay. Well, Eric, anything else we need to say, or Kitty?
No, Kitty had to adjourn, Karen. She had another appointment. So
Places to be. Okay.
check
Well, good night, everyone. I'm so grateful to have you on board tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Oh, here you go.
Great job, Karen.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Good to
Very
see you all.
good job. Thanks, Karen.
Okay, thank you.